Good Monday, everyone. It's psychic medium Josh Simons coming to you with my weekly Monday message. Today, I'm out in the middle of the woods. Took a walk this morning. Said hello to the property. Said hello to the trees. Got in some sun. Got in some wind. It's a beautiful day, even though it may be a little brisk out here. And today's Monday message that I have for you today on Monday, hopefully will solve all sorts of problems for you. If I told you that I had the secret to life and that I'm willing to give it away for free right now to you, to anybody who's watching this, I would understand if you were a little bit skeptical. I would be skeptical too. But I do have the secret to life. I do have the manual to life, if you will. And I believe it's a set of principles and guidelines that if we were handed this in the very beginning part of our life, our whole entire life would be way different than it is. Some of you who have sat with me for readings, you'll know what I'm talking about here. If you've heard what I'm about to go over, just bear with me, tune me out, listen again for a refresher if you want. But this is information that everybody can benefit from hearing. And I say that it is the manual to life, the secret to life, because this is what comes from the dead. And this is like anything in life. If I want to learn how to fish, I'm going to talk to somebody who's fished, right? Not somebody who has an idea of fishing, but somebody who's actually fished. If I'm going to learn how to drive, I want to talk to somebody who's driven before. The same thing goes with life. You know, the dead, people who used to have life, have lost it and gained that perspective and that retrospect. Boy, they know a lot about living, they know a lot about life, and they know regret. And everything that I'm about to share with you comes straight from the dead, from the spirits of those who carry on, who see us, who know us, who feel us. So, before I get into the manual to life, the secret to life, and how to lead your best life, I just want to remind everybody, my spiritual views, I try to keep them as simple as possible, but what separates our world from the world of spirit to me is very much like a one-way mirror that we would see in a cop show or a detective movie, where we sit on the side of the suspects, pretty oblivious to what's going on the other side of the mirror. Our spirits, our ancestors, our beloved dead, they sit on the side of the police, the cops, the detectives. They can see us, they can feel us, they can know us. And it's that perspective that I hope to lend here today to you. So I want to let you know that, yes, I do have the secret to life. I want to let you know that it is basically the manual to leading a successful life, or as peaceful a life as one can manage. Yes, it is free. It doesn't cost you anything. And it's something that you already have within you. And this is the kicker of it all. You already have this inside of you. So I don't want to be, the person that says, you've got to study for years and years and years and read all of these books and, go to therapy for years and years and years. And then finally you can figure out life and figure out how to lead it. No, that's not what today is about. Today is about looking at the inside of you, looking at the tools that you already have on the inside of you that can make sure that you have the best life possible. This is how it works. So I want you to imagine, we're going to do a thought exercise here for a moment. I want you to imagine the biggest problem in your life right now. In current events, in the present day, the biggest problem in your life, the thing that haunts you every single day. Go ahead and put it in your mind for me. Hold it in your brain. All right. Now what I would like you to do is I want you to imagine that you have a loved one, a daughter, a son, a sister, a best friend, a mother, a father, whomever. I want you to imagine that you have a loved one, somebody that you love dearly. And I want you to imagine that they have that same exact problem, that same exact situation, person, condition, regret, what have you. I want you to imagine that that thing that haunts you every day belongs to somebody that you love. Now, with that in mind, I want you to imagine for a moment that that loved one, that daughter, son, best friend, sister, brother, parent, whomever, I want you to imagine that this loved one of yours has this problem that you do. And with that in mind, I want you to ask yourself a question. If your loved one, this sister, daughter, son, whomever, had the same problem that you do, what would your advice be to that person? And I want you to think about it right now as we're going over this. What would your advice be to that person? I can almost guarantee you 99.9% of the time, the advice you'd give to another person in your same shoes, in your same situation, is not the same as the advice you're giving yourself. When you're faced with challenges, when you're faced with issues, obstructions, and you don't know what to do, I want you to pause for a moment, and I want you to play a little game with yourself. I want you to ask yourself in that moment of not knowing where to go, what to do, how to get through it, whatever it is, I want you to ask yourself a question. If I had a daughter or a son or a sister or a loved one or whomever, and they had the same exact problem, what would I tell them to do? The answer that comes to mind immediately is the answer that you must take. And if you don't take that answer, you'll suffer. Whether it's a little bit of suffering, whether it's a whole lot of suffering, you're going to suffer. A very useful exercise for you, for any of us, would be to take a blank sheet of paper, draw a line down the middle, and on the left-hand side, write down the 5 or 6 biggest problems that you have in your life. And on the right-hand side of that column, write down what you would tell a daughter, a son, a best friend, whomever, to do with that situation if they had that same exact problem. You already have inside of you what you need. You just have to figure out how to use it. There's no psychic, there's no psychotherapist, psychiatrist, psychologist, there's no herbal supplement, there's no medication, there's no self-help book, there's no documentary, there's no conference, there's nothing that's going to work for you unless you cover this very simple first base, and that is to love yourself like you would love a child. It sounds overly simplistic, and I love simple things. It sounds overly simplistic, but it's very powerful. Very, very powerful. It's also the same way that you become your own medium. If you've ever lost a parent, a grandparent, and you ask yourself that question, what would I tell my daughter to do? What would I tell my son to do in the same exact scenario? The answer to that question is exactly what your parents, your grandparents are telling you to do from the other side of that one-way mirror. What I'm asking you to do, as best you can, is try to develop a witness state. They call it a witness state, right? Coming up outside of your life, taking a look at yourself, your life, through a third-person perspective. We all are very guilty of walking through this life with first-person blinders on, right? Of, this is my life, this is my perception. We don't see ourselves in the third person. And the difference is I went to school here, I went to work there, I did this, versus Josh went to school there, Josh went to work there, Josh did that, right? To kind of look at ourselves in our life in the third person is very powerful. Over the course of our life, we develop these lenses of fear, worry, and self-loathing for ourselves, right? We are all our own biggest critics, our own worst enemies, when we should really be our own best friends. For other folks, so for people that we love, our best friends, our children, our siblings, our parents, we have nothing but love, compassion, and wisdom. And that love, compassion, and wisdom that lives inside of you already will get you through anything you ever face if you can just figure out how to hold a mirror up to it and shine it onto yourself. Probably a year ago, I was just kind of thinking about how awful my son's high school experience must be. You know, I graduated high school in 1997. He's due to graduate this year in 2021. And I was thinking to myself how awful high school would be with cell phones and video cameras and social media and internet. And you know, he has it relatively good, right? And there are some kids out there that have it really awful. But I was just pondering one day about how awful it would be to go through high school. You know, even on the best of days, it would still be awful to have that sort of stuff floating over your head, right? Cyberbullying, all of that. And as I'm thinking about that stuff, out of nowhere, my own spirits, my own ancestors come to me and say, you don't realize how difficult you've had it. Talking about me. Anybody that's alive today is alive during the age of advertising. So yeah, our kids, you know, going through high school, they have it awful. They sure do. But we also had it awful growing up. Every single one of us, from the age of 2 on, we start to ingest and absorb messages from media, from advertising. And it's really the advertising that does it. And, you know, I'll say it over and over and over again. The worst thing that would have ever happened to modern woman is maybe she's born with it, maybe it's Maybelline, because that convinces you right out the gate that you're not born with it. Imagine having a daughter or a son, so incredible and beautiful and intelligent and funny and all of these things that you could really ever hope your offspring to be, your kids to be. And yet you see them struggling with, I'm not pretty enough, or they compare themselves to other people, or they're not athletic enough, or they're not muscly enough, or they're not thin enough. The love, compassion, and wisdom that you have inside of you, when faced with that situation of a child, a best friend, a sister, brother, somebody saying, I'm not enough, and, you know, you'd go, what are you talking about? You're beautiful, you're amazing, you're wonderful. Your love, your compassion, and your wisdom that you have for everybody else is exactly what you need for yourself. And yet the world, for so many different reasons, religion, advertising, fairy tales, all of these things, they teach us that we are anything but whole. Because if we are convinced that we have these big gaping holes inside of us, that we're incomplete, right? We're going to eat more, drink more, sex more, drug more, rock and roll more, TV more. We're going to consume, all the while making some millionaire fat cat on the hill fatter and richer while we feel empty. There's no car, there's no makeup, there's no clothes, there's nothing materialistic that will ever make us feel whole because we were never incomplete to begin with. Industry, capitalism, money, advertising, all of those things, they want you to know that you are incomplete. And that's why, you know, walking through the parking lot at the local grocery store and you walk by a window of a minivan, right? A big reflective surface, and you catch a glimpse of yourself in it, and you say to yourself, I'm too fat, I'm too this, I'm too that. You would never have a daughter say that to herself. You would never have a son say that to himself. The person who has all of the compassion that you need is you. You just have to figure out how to bring it to yourself. What I'm talking about, again, is this love for yourself, that self-love movement that can be a very slippery slope because we can love ourselves into the couch watching Netflix and eating ice cream all day long. But that's not what we would have for a child. Hopefully, that's not what we would have for a child. So when I say love yourself like a child, I'm not giving you an excuse to coast, right? I'm giving you an excuse or a reason to be accountable to yourself, to strive for better. And yet, if you're not hitting that mark, to not beat yourself up. We're programmed by this world. This world, again, would love us to walk through empty, feeling incomplete, feeling imperfect, and striving to spend all of our money to find that sense of completion. It's unnecessary. It's a fool's game. It really is. You already have inside of you everything that you need. You've been programmed by the world to tell you different. And how do you reprogram yourself? Over and over and over and over again. Every time you find yourself speaking negatively to yourself, you find yourself saying, I'm too much of this and I'm not enough of that, and I could have done this and I should have done that. All of those would haves, could haves that haunt us, haunt every single one of us. You say to yourself, what would I tell my kid to do? What would I tell my son to do? What would I tell my daughter to do? What would I tell my best friend to do? And by saying that question over and over and over again, and then taking the answer to that question, you're reprogramming yourself. You have been programmed by this world to not love yourself. And by doing so, you're making somebody out there a lot of money. It doesn't take nearly as long as you think to program yourself to love yourself. About 1.5 years ago, I had a scare. I thought I was going to die. I had something going on in my body that I thought was cancer. And I thought I was done for. Thought I was a goner. I don't deal with hospitals well. I don't deal with medical stuff well. So, of course, my mind went to where it shouldn't. I went to the worst case scenario. And facing our own mortality, facing our own death, it's scary. It's scary for anybody. And so when I thought that I had a sickness like cancer, I was kind of hyperventilating. I was freaking out. I was crying. I was thinking about losing my husband, losing my son, losing our family, losing my parents, losing my sister, losing all of the people in my world that I love very deeply, losing my mission, losing the reason that I'm here, losing all of this wonderful life that I have, right? And so in the midst of that freak out, in the midst of that turmoil, something hit me. Just come out of nowhere, and I give credit to my spirits for this. In that moment of hysteria, because that's what it was, I thought to myself for a moment, if my kid, Sequoia, was in this shoes, right, in this position right now, what would I tell him? Well, I would tell him to get himself together, pull it together, go to the doctor, get your test done, be calm until you get your results, and if the results come back and say something negative or bad, you face it head on. And that's what I did. I calmed down. I got myself together. I took the advice I'd give my kid. I got myself together, went to the doctors, got a whole bunch of tests done. And long story short, I'm fine. Nothing was wrong with me. I was just freaking out. If I hadn't taken the advice that I would have given my son in that moment, I would have been freaking out for the entire time it would have taken me to eventually get my test results back. And when you freak out like that, everybody knows when you freak out and you stress and you're feeling these things, it's not good. It's not healthy for your body. In fact, could probably cause the thing that you're worried about anyways. It's kind of ironic. But I took that advice, and I've used that tool over and over and over and over and over again. And again, this is something that comes right from spirit. This is something that comes from our beloved dead and our ancestors. They, through their side of the mirror, they see you, they see me, they see incredible people in a really awful society, in a consumeristic, driven by advertising and marketing kind of society that's just wanting us to spend more, spend more, spend more. We're all designed to hate ourselves from the very beginning. If you're alive during the age of advertising, you are also receiving these messages from TV shows, from magazine covers, from all of these places, convincing you that you're not enough, when in fact, you would never allow a child to feel that way. So when I talk to you about the manual of life, right, this is what I'm talking about, self-love. You already have it inside of you. You already have the capacity to love other people inside of you. Hold up a mirror and love yourself. Ask yourself, whenever you're not knowing what to do or where to turn, what would I tell my kid to do? What would I tell my best friend to do? What would I tell my loved ones to do? Boom, boom, boom. The answer to that question, you take it. If you don't, you will suffer. To a small degree, to a great degree. I can't tell you, probably specific to that situation. But take the advice you give your kids, your friends, your sisters, your brothers, your loved ones. I mean, think about it right now. Again, over and over and over again. Think about the way you talk to yourself when you look in a mirror. Would you have your kid do that? No. if you have kids in this world and you want them to be strong, confident, powerful individuals, you know as well as I do that your kids aren't going to do what you tell them to do. Your kids are going to do what you show them to do. And if you show them how to be powerful, how to be strong, they'll most likely turn out that way. But you can't be weak and cowering in the corner. You can't show them weakness, preach to them strength, and expect them to become strong. That's not how it works. So, take that piece of paper. This, again, is a very powerful exercise. Take a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle. Biggest problems on the left-hand side, what you would tell your kid, your best friend, your sister, brother, whomever, your loved ones. If they had that same exact problem, what would you tell them to do? And then take that advice, put that advice into motion. And then slowly over time, you'll learn to love yourself. You'll learn to treat yourself with respect, compassion, wisdom, and love. You already have it inside of you. You just have to figure out how to use it. Be kind to yourself. Take care of yourself so you can take care of other people. Be well. I appreciate you, and I appreciate you being on this journey with me, and I thank you for listening to these messages. If there's anybody in your life that you feel could benefit from this little secret of life, this little manual, pass them along this video and remind them that they're not nearly the monster that they think they are. So again, thank you. Happy Monday. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you out there.